You okay hitting the recording, Cheryl? Great, thank you. Today we're talking about keeping a focus on equity and access in local food systems. And food insecurity is always an issue here in Vermont, but we've seen a dramatic increase since COVID-19 hit the state. A survey that was conducted in late March to early April. So it was basically the first couple of weeks in April. This survey was conducted out of UVM by Meredith Niles, and it showed that food security is up by 1/3. It went from about 18% to 24% in a very short period of time. And remember, that survey happened about a month ago. So I think it's safe to say that the numbers may have shifted and things have gotten even worse. That survey also found that only about 30% participated in food assistance programs. While dealing with COVID-19 has been challenging for so many people in so many ways, one of the bright spots that we've been talking about in this online conversation series is the way that farms have pivoted, farms have adapted, especially farms with direct sales. Many of them are really taking it upon themselves to feed their communities. And what's even more impressive is that so many are taking equity and access into account. They're making sure to feed their communities no matter what income level and whether they can actually afford the fresh local food that is increasingly becoming available. And a lot of farmers have partnered with organizations, nonprofits, and other groups around the state that are doing so much to help with equity and access. And what's interesting is all of these folks have been working with equity and access for a long time, and there have already been structures and systems in place. And now, with the increased need to address food insecurity, the particular presenters today have really stepped up and are doing even more. So we wanted to take this opportunity to share what's going on, address questions. Many of them came in beforehand by email and through registration, and keep the conversation going. We know we can only do so much, talk about so much in 1 hour, and we're really just going to scratch the surface today. But we hope that today's hour-long conversation will be the start of a deeper dive into how to address these difficult issues. With us today, we've got Lisa Masé from Harmonized Cookery, and she's also the chair of the Farm to Plate Food Justice Task Force. We have Kate Spring from Good Heart Farmstead, Matt Maxwell from Maxwell's Neighborhood Farm and Milk with Dignity. And then we have Molly Wills from Rural Vermont and Grace Odell from NOFA Vermont. Before we hear from them, though, I just want to do a quick poll and see who is here with us today. So if you've called in, sorry you can't see this, but if you are logged in through your computer, you should be able to see a question that says, describe yourself, check all that apply. I'll give people just a moment to fill it out. Now I'm going to end the polling and share the results. And it looks like we've got about 14% are farmers, 18% are service providers or extension. We've got about 43% nonprofits, no government agencies, 14% educators. Wow, and then about 25% other. Those of you who are others, if you wouldn't mind typing into the chat and just letting us know who you are. If you don't feel comfortable, that's totally fine. And now I'm gonna close the poll. Oh, I realized I neglected to share the results. Now you see the results on your screen. So I'll leave these up for just a moment as I turn it over to our first presenter, Lisa Masé. Lisa, did you want to share your screen?
No, not today.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Lisa and Cheryl, for organizing this important conversation. And I do hope we are able to have somewhat of a conversation as much as we can with over 40 people on a webinar. My name is Lisa Masé, as Lisa said, and again, I'm really grateful to get to be here today and hear from everybody else who is presenting. I am a food sovereignty activist, I'm a nutritionist, and I'm a homesteader and folk herbalist. I live in central Vermont on Abenaki land, of course, and I am an immigrant to the US. I came from Italy for high school, and with that immigration and assimilation process came a lot of learning for me about having come from an intact food system in Italy and entered a broken one in the Midwest of the United States. I feel so grateful to have landed in 1997 and have remained here mostly because the nature of community that sort of fosters and centers and prioritizes clean food and clean water is really similar to how I grew up in Italy. And first and foremost, in my work, I really have to thank my teachers. My primary teacher, my grandmother, raised us 18 cousins, homesteading, wildcrafting, making herbal remedies, and cooking seasonally in northern Italy. And that really taught me everything that I know in many ways and has shaped the work that I am doing now. Many other teachers have come along the way to whom I'm so grateful. Folks at Race Forward. If you don't know them, please do check them out. Folks at the Interaction Institute for Social Change, the Center for Whole Communities, Food Solutions New England, so many different amazing organizations from which we can learn about equity in the food system. So first and foremost, I'm very much grateful to my teachers. Despite the fact that I'm an immigrant, at the end of the day, I have white skin, right? So I think with equity, the most important thing is to embrace and accept my privilege. I have so many group memberships. Sure, I am never going to be the president of the United States. I'm okay with that. And the fact that I'm a white person gives me all of this unearned privilege, right? It allows me to walk around in the world, which is a world that is dominated by the patriarchy, dominated by whiteness. It allows me to walk around in that world with greater ease than folks who have traditionally been marginalized walk and move in the world. And I think we can't really talk about decentralizing the food system, relocalizing the food system, dealing with something like a pandemic or any other crisis that might come our way without first having equity as our foundation, as our platform. And the reason for this, I truly believe, is because despite the fact that we are all one human race, we live within this racial construct that puts some people at greater advantage, right? Like, despite the fact that I came from a different country, I am an immigrant with white skin. And so I have these advantages, these unearned privileges. And really trying to make things equitable and even for all is all about accepting my own privilege and then reaching out and listening to stories. And so much of the work that I do as a food sovereignty activist, working for the US Food Sovereignty Alliance, is about listening to stories and essentially working to change the narrative of what the food system has been, how it's been a predominantly white dominated space, and changing that narrative by hearing stories and sharing stories in order to help folks collectively come to an understanding of the food system that's inclusive, right? starting from the fact that Abenaki people are the people that are indigenous to this land. Everybody else who comes here is an immigrant, so to speak, and is treading on Abenaki territory. So, how can I start by listening to the stories of Abenaki people, understanding what these folks are asking for in terms of caring for the land, in terms of developing food systems that are regenerative, that are sustainable. I've had the great blessing to work with Fred Wiseman, who is an ethnobotanist, a professor, and an Abenaki tribal member, as well as a wonderful woman named Peggy Fullerton, who runs the Csa Farm. I know some of you, Alicia, you were asking about efforts around food sovereignty in the Connecticut River Valley, and that's where the Csa Farm is. It's actually in Littleton, New Hampshire, but considered the Connecticut River bioregion. And Peggy is, for many decades now, has been working really hard to grow out and harvest and share traditional Abenaki foods, as well as invite other folks in who are of European descent, or of descent from other parts of the world when it seems appropriate, to share in the Abenaki traditions and understand. So I highly encourage folks, when we're thinking about equity, when we're thinking about the food system, every part of the country is unique, every state is unique, and in Vermont, we have the great privilege of being connected with a lot of different Abenaki tribal members that, you know, may be willing to share stories when it feels safe, right? Because that's another huge piece around equity, whether it's in general or in the food system, is yes, listening to stories, but also in a way that engenders and creates not only inclusivity, but safety, right? So in my work in the food system here in Vermont, I've been with the Farm to Plate Network for about 10 years now, and we just recently, through our food access group, created a food justice task force, which is really just the beginning of helping Farm to Plate to center equity in its food systems work. And within this food justice task force, we've been working for almost 5 years now to create a food access toolkit, which is a self-assessment guide to working within the food system in 5 different areas. So within the toolkit, we talk about all these different approaches: hunger awareness and education, hunger relief, food justice, the human right to food, and food sovereignty. So folks can use this toolkit, do a self-assessment, understand, where they might be showing up within these different approaches, understand how all of the different approaches are necessary, and then explore how they might be able to work within the different categories where they might not be working. It's a tool that's, hopefully going to foster partnerships, help us see in Vermont where the gaps are when we're doing justice work. And when resources are emailed out after this talk, you'll get a link to the Food Access Toolkit. I really encourage you to download it, use it, bring it to your organization, have some meetings around it, conversations. Those of us who are part of the Food Justice Task Force with Farm to Plate are here to help you. Reach out. My email will be included. We're happy to schedule a call and help your organization talk through the toolkit, talk through your results. So this is all to say that, out of all of the different kinds of equity work that we can do within the food system, first and foremost, it's important to look at our strengths and our weaknesses, right? So take a look at our privilege, take a look at what's unearned, understand how we can help center folks who've been traditionally marginalized, not only Abenaki, right, but BIPOC, so folks who are of color, folks who are indigenous from all different groups, LGBTQIA groups, elders, youth, so many groups that are marginalized that it almost seems crazy that there are any of us left. So really starting to consider how can we bring in these folks, with these viral times, I haven't been able to teach classes that I teach locally at senior centers, at community mental health organizations, and at high schools. And so we're talking within all of those groups virtually about how can we leverage our time, which we may have more of right now, in order to produce and distribute more food. Elders are really excited about this. Folks who have mental differences and are part of community mental health are really excited about going out to local farms, volunteering in exchange for food, getting their hands dirty and getting some food. This makes community supported agriculture hopefully less stigmatized and less polarized, hopefully makes it feel more accessible because, you know, I come from a country where 38% of people's income on average is spent on food. And I moved to a country where 8% of people's income on average is spent on food, right? And so this needs to shift, not only to support farmers, but also to reflect values, right? And so how can we take the subsidies away from those commodity crops and start to pay attention to and support farmers who in the past have been commodity farmers and are now switching to a more diversified way of growing fruits and veggies, supporting their local communities, working with traditionally marginalized groups to say, hey, you know, what do you want? What would you like? What would be helpful to you? So that's just a little bit about my work and what I have to offer. And I'm always happy to answer questions at the end. And always feel free to email me and reach out. Happy to talk about anything that's coming up in the chat box. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lisa. We were able to put the link to the toolkit, the Farm to Plate Food Justice Toolkit in the chat box. And for everyone who's registered, I'll send out an email afterwards, and in it you'll get Lisa's direct email address, as well as the toolkit link and other resources that come up today. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for the work that you've been doing. I'm now gonna switch gears and turn it over to Kate Spring, who is with Good Heart Farm L3C, and part of their mission on their farm is to address these issues. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to talk. And Lisa, thank you for everything you shared. I'm excited to look at some of the resources you shared as well. So I will give you a little background of our farm. So I run Good Heart Farmstead with my husband, Edge. We are in Worcester, Vermont, so just north of Montpelier. And as Lisa mentioned, our farm mission is to make local food more accessible to low-income Vermonters. We started in 2013, and this has always been our mission. And along with that, we kind of like a secondary part of our mission is to help people connect directly with their food and with the land that their food comes from. So we have always had the Csa model at the heart of our farm, because we have seen how Csa can create a direct connection to the land and to food in a way that going to even buy local food at a supermarket isn't able to completely recreate. So in the last couple of years, we've been really looking at how can we increase food accessibility. When we started, we started working with the NOFA Vermont Farm Share program right away, which is a great program, and Grace might speak a little bit more to this later. But basically, the way it works is that the Farm Share program helps farms subsidize Csa shares for low-income Vermonters. And we basically raise 25% of the share cost, and then NOFA will match that, so that members can get a season's worth of local fresh vegetables for 50% off. And so that's always been kind of like where we started from. Along with that, what we have done to raise money for subsidized shares, we've done a number of different fundraisers. So every year we have 1 or 2 pizza nights on the farm with a wood-fired pizza oven. We started out just renting the wood belly pizza oven and then built our own. We also have done t-shirt fundraisers and canvas bag fundraisers. There's just a lot of creative ways that you can put together in order to raise money for food access. Then this year, something that we had already shifted to before the pandemic started was kind of tweaking the CSA model. So typically with many CSAs, the way that CSA began was that members get a certain discount on their food as a way to kind of like thank members for supporting the farm. So you would sign up in the spring and get a discount on your summer vegetables. What we have found is that for us to have a sustainable business, we need to also be paid what food costs. And so as farmers, we're always balancing how can we make food more accessible and keep it affordable while also being able to run a sustainable business, which is one of the reasons we really love the Farm Share program, because unlike donating food, which is an important aspect of getting food to food shelves, and for example, but unlike just simply donating food, the farmers are able to offer subsidies while still getting paid for the full cost of that food. And it's a really important aspect if we want to have a sustainable local food system for farmers to be able to pay their bills, pay themselves, pay their employees. But going back to our shift is that instead of offering 10 or 15% off of a CSA share, we have now shifted that from giving people a discount to putting that money towards subsidized shares. So it's similar to like the Hunger Mountain Co-op, for example, for anyone who is in Montpelier, they used to give 5 cents off your bill for every bag, reusable bag that you brought. And that 5 cents doesn't necessarily mean that much to each individual, but then they shifted to, instead of giving each individual 5 cents off, they started putting that 5 cents towards donating to, I think, the Vermont Food Bank. And all of a sudden, 5 cents with all of their customers can add up to $10,000 for the Vermont Food Bank. So we have done a similar thing where now all of our CSA members pay the full price for a share. So for example, our summer share is $495. Instead of giving people a discount, we just put $49.50 towards subsidized shares. And I've just created a relatively simple tracking sheet in order to track all of the subsidies. But what that allows us to do is give more subsidized shares to more people. One of the things we found every year is that the Farm Share program runs out of funding before they run out of funding, so that we have people sign up and there's no more subsidy available for them. However, we've just focused on more fundraising over the years, so that we have been lucky where we've been able to still accept more people into the share because we have focused on fundraising and focused on creating just a reservoir of funds to put towards those subsidies. So this is our first year doing that. And as I said, it's something we had already been planning on, but it's really exciting to see the number of shares that we have. Every time I put that add onto that subsidy and see the amount of money that's coming in, I just get really excited to be like, wow, we now have like over $3,000 that we can just put towards subsidies. Whereas before it might be anywhere between like $20 and $50 off for each individual. And another aspect for us business-wise to have a sustainable farm is that we know we want to and need to have folks who are able to pay a full price in order to allow us to create subsidies as well. So we really love having that balance and mix of people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. And I also really love that when everyone comes to the CSA pickup, you don't know what people's backgrounds are. You just have people coming together on a land for food. This year things will be a little different because we won't necessarily be able to all hang out and talk at the pickup leisurely. But we've just seen how food is it's really like this it can be, it isn't always, but it can be this thing that brings us together and helps create more equitable systems because people are interacting that may not interact in other places because they just, as Lisa said, there's so many ways that even though we are all Vermonters, we're all, we're all humans, we are separated in different ways too. So we've found that with the CSA can bring people together that may not run into each other in other ways. We definitely have seen that the CSA can be a barrier because there's that aspect of like needing to pay up front. What we've done in order to help decrease that barrier is offer payment plans, and even more so going from 3 payment plans to folks who get subsidies, offering them even more payments to spread that out. We also accept EBT, so people who can pay for part of their shares with their EBT cards. And that is just starting out, something we'd like to expand and reach more people with that option. But one of the things before I wrap up that I wanted to just point out that's been really helpful for us is looking around to see what organizations are already doing and partnering with them. We have a very small farm. We grow on 1.5 acres. This year with the changes around COVID, we have added 20 shares to our summer CSA options, and we sold out very quickly. And so we're already selling fall harvest shares. But when we talk to other farms, it's very, well, what approach we take is that we are all in a community together, and it sometimes can feel like, oh, local food, this is a saturated market. But when you step back and see like the overwhelming majority of our food is coming from out of state, I feel like a more productive way to view it is how can farms work together. So if we sell out, I can say, okay, what farmers do I know that I can send these customers to? Or how can we support each other in different ways. And so for us, a lot of that has been working with NOFA and the Farm Share program, and also working with our local food shelf. So because we have always stated that our mission is to make local food accessible, we have we have a handful of people who will just specifically donate shares. So those shares, we end up taking food just directly to our local food shelf. And we did have one woman who she had let us know last year she's retiring and she's not going to be able to, donate quite as much as she used to. So again, with like putting 10% of our CSA payments right towards subsidies, we were able to say, okay, so we know that this amount of money might not be coming in, but we can still serve the food shelf in this way. So that's, I think, the bulk of what I want to say. I know there's more folks to get to, and I'm also happy to answer any questions. I'll have to hop off before the hour is up, but Lisa's welcome to share my email. If anyone has questions around CSAs and how to connect with more customers and work within current systems that are already set up to help people access food, and I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Kate. And it really is impressive, everything that you're doing. And if you don't mind, I'll include your email address and of course your website link so that people can learn more, and we'll see how the discussion goes and see how much time we have for Q&A. Like you mentioned, NOFA Vermont is doing a lot, and we do have Grace from NOFA who will be able to talk about that in a little bit. So thank you very much, Kate. And I'm now going to turn it over to Matt Maxwell, who is from Maxwell's Neighborhood Farm and works with Milk with Dignity. So he's going to talk about his farm and the larger Milk with Dignity program. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, my name's Matt Maxwell. I'm a dairy farmer, and my family has a farm in northern Vermont. And I'm here today on behalf of the Milk with Dignity program, which we've been a member of since 2017 when it started. It sort of piggybacked off the Caring Dairy program. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that, but it's a partnership with Ben and Jerry's, where they provide you with a certain list of standards on how you operate your dairy farm and how you treat your employees and the pay scale and safety precautions and all that. And in exchange for fulfilling all of these standards, they pay you a premium for the milk that you produce. So we've been doing that since 2017. And it's worked out pretty good. I'm also on the Milk with the Dignity Working Group, which is the group that asked me to participate in this today. And that's a group made up of farm owners, farm workers, members of migrant justice, people that are on the Milk with Dignity Standards Council, which is sort of just a group of individuals that sort of make sure that the standards that Ben and Jerry's has provided are being followed up on these farms. And the thing that's been really good for us with the Milk with Dignity program is it's allowed us to reduce the turnover on employees at our farm. One of the big notions on the Milk with Dignity program is that it only benefits immigrant workers, which is not true. It's for all farm workers. So regardless of what country you're from, if you're an American or whether you are an immigrant, it benefits you if you work on a farm, and it really helps out. It allows us to pay our employees a very workable wage. We now pay everybody at least the Vermont minimum wage, all the farm workers on our farm, which without the program, we wouldn't be able to afford to do that. I mean, as much as we'd like to pay everybody minimum wage, without the extra money coming in from this program, we wouldn't be able to afford to do that. And so that's one of the things we've been able to retain employees, which has made our operation, much more efficient. And the Milk with Dignity program also provides things that farm workers in the past, especially in the state of Vermont, have never really had. And it's not that they haven't had it because farm owners and farm managers are tyrants and don't. It's just that they haven't been able to afford it under their normal circumstances. But now they have paid sick days, they have paid vacations, they get adequate health care, all things that anybody that works in a normal business would receive anyway, but because it's the agriculture business and things are done a little bit differently, a lot of workers, especially immigrant workers, didn't have access to those type of programs, and now with the Milk with Dignity program, they do, and it's just made the relationship between the management and the workers much better. It's allowed us to grow our business in ways that we wouldn't have been able to do under the previous format without this extra money coming in from Ben and Jerry's and Milk with Dignity. And so I think it's created a lot of equity in the economy as far as the agriculture economy is concerned. You don't have these workers maybe moving around, sort of jumping around, trying to find the next job that's going to pay them a little bit more per hour. Everybody that's in the program they're guaranteed at least the Vermont minimum wage, which is nice. And then, of course, some workers that have been at the farm for several years are making more than that, but they all at least get that. So it reduces turnover, higher wages, which is good. And it increases the communication because the Milk with Dignity Standards Council, they provide translators and people that'll come to the farm and help you out with employee meetings, which is nice for us because we're a large farm. We milk about 820 cows, and so we have 15 or 16 full-time employees. A lot of them don't speak English, so for us to be able to communicate on a before maybe we'd have a company meeting maybe once every 2 or 3 months. Now we have a meeting once every couple weeks. Everybody can get out any grievances that they have or any problems that they have, and we identify problems quicker and we solve problems quicker, which makes life on the farm easier for everybody, workers, management, owners, all the way up the thing. Another good part of the program is it provides a $50 bonus per month for any farm worker that works more than 40 hours a week, which the majority of them do. So they get a $50 bonus every week as long as they're working those 40 hours. So that's an extra $600 a year, which is nice and entices people, I think, to stick around with their current employers instead of trying to jump around and stuff like that. We've certainly faced some challenges, I think, in the last month or so. Obviously, our main product is fluid milk sales. We don't do any direct sales, so we're sort of at the mercy of the large milk selling conglomerates. And as most of you probably know, DFA, which is where we ship our milk, as of May 1st, you had to produce 15% less than what you had produced. So, whatever amount of milk we made for May 2019, for May 2020, we have to make 15% less than that. And so that it's created some difficult decisions on the farm. We've had to beef 50 or so milking cows. So in April we were probably milking about 830 cows, and now we're milking about 780 cows. We've gone to milking all of our cows 3 times a day. Now we milk our low and medium producing cows only twice a day. So all of this is all these kind of things trickle down. It's led to sort of a reduction in hours for some of our guys and men and women who work in our milking parlor. They're seeing sort of a reduction in their hours where they would normally get, say, a 12-hour workday. Now they're looking at a 10-hour workday, just because we're milking less cows and we're milking them less times during the day. So that's been a little bit of a issue. Nobody likes to see their paycheck go down, especially in a time like this. So we've been working very closely with Milk with Dignity and Ben and Jerry's to try to see if there's any way that we can sort of keep everybody, even though they're not working the full amount of hours that they normally would be, if there's any way that we could sort of subsidize their pay so they're not losing so much money per week. Again, this isn't a decision that the farm wanted to do. I mean, obviously we'd like to be trying to make as much milk as we possibly can, but when you're not getting paid for it, it doesn't make much sense to put in the money to make it. I think going forward, I don't know where this will lead to. I mean, I'm hoping that it's just a month to month thing, and then by the end of the summer maybe we'll be back to being able to full production. But this, you never know. This could be the way that things are now in the country for a while. So hopefully, the communication that we have with the Milk with Dignity working group and with some help from Migrant Justice, we can get through it and hopefully maintain a high enough standard so we don't lose some of these highly valued employees that we've worked so hard over the last 3 years to retain and train and all that, and then end up not having the hours or the money to pay them, and then obviously they have to move on. So that's sort of our biggest fear. And we're going day by day and trying to find solutions for that doesn't happen. That's it. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has about the Milk with Dignity program or my farm specifically. So just let me know, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. There are some questions in the chat, so I'm gonna, in the interest of time, we'll move on to the next speaker. And if you feel like looking at the chat, Matt, feel free to type into the chat, or we can, circle back towards the end and see how much time we have.
Thank you.
But thank you, Matt, for sharing, for your work with Milk with Dignity and on your farm, and also for sharing, sharing what you're going through. It's tough all around, and whatever level you are, there's hard decisions and hard situations to work through. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to turn it over now to Molly Wills, who is with Rural Vermont and has been working in a variety of different facets with many of these issues for quite some time. Hi, Molly.
Hi, thanks, Lisa. And I apologize, I've got my dog. I hope he's not too distracting. My name is Molly Wills, and I'm the Director of Grassroots Organizing at Rural Vermont. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Rural Vermont, we've spent the last 35 years now working to amplify the voices of farmers and advocating for an agricultural system that is both scale appropriate, built on justice and dignity, and also reverence for the earth. And as everyone has mentioned today, we're all painfully aware of how this pandemic is highlighting the importance of strong and resilient local food systems, and truly bringing to light the disparities and gaps in that system, particularly as it relates to equity and access. And Rural Vermont believes that we must use what's honestly a very dark and scary situation as an opportunity to invest in our farmers and our agricultural communities while prioritizing those that are most vulnerable, particularly including the farm worker community and the food insecure. We need to build strength and resilience and accessibility into our food systems and society, doing that through policy and regulation and creative organizing, as well as cultural change as we pursue a just transition towards a more regenerative future for everyone. It couldn't be more apparent that farmers need relief now, and we're working hard to get support directly into the hands of those that need it most. But in the midst of all of this, we can't lose track of the need for long-term systemic change that will make us more resilient to crises in the future. And these are things like universal health care, access to childcare and elder care, and paid sick leave and food security for everyone. Food is fundamental, and farmers are truly essential, and we're working to bridge sectors and look holistically at how we're treating our people and the earth and how to best invest in the long-term well-being of all, even if at face value they aren't solely agricultural issues. We're pushing back against threats of disaster capitalism, corporate consolidation, industrial and global land grabs that are happening in Vermont as well as across the country and globe. And as we navigate the unknown, we're working to ensure that the goal is not to return to the way that things were. It's very clear that the way that things were broken. It was a system that worked for some, but fundamentally it pits us against each other and brings us further from our shared goals of food sovereignty, food security, and a dignified agricultural system that feeds our communities and respects the earth. Rural Vermont is working at a local level to ensure that the immediate needs of the farming community are met at this time, including working with Migrant Justice and other allies, including NOFA, to get direct support into the hands of the farm worker community who don't qualify for federal or state assistance, are working every day with no relief. And we really need to emphasize the most vulnerable populations and support direct grassroots organizing opportunities to bring those voices to policymakers locally, regionally, and nationally, and view towards immediate relief and long-term sustainability. Just later this week, hopefully by tomorrow, Rural Vermont is really thrilled to announce a grant program for farmers markets that will support the purchase of COVID-related expenses. It's going to be a rapid turnaround grant process of $500 per market that will be available all across the state. Priority may be given to smaller and markets in underserved areas, but we're really hoping to support this community in a broad way. So please tell your market manager and keep your eyes peeled for the launch of that program by the end of the week. Rural Vermont has put a huge amount of emphasis related to food sovereignty for a long time, and scale appropriate regulations, particularly around on-farm slaughter and raw milk, are ever more important now as we're seeing slaughterhouses and meat processing closures and bottlenecks, milk dumps across the state, and predictions of nationwide food shortages. So we're actively working on expanding regulations and opportunities on both of these issues, in addition to a number of others. And it's truly time for our regulations to match up with our realities on the ground and to support farm viability on a Vermont scale, in addition to expanding farmers' ability to feed their communities and increase the food security of the state. We believe very strongly that no farmer or farm worker should be left behind in this effort, and that we need to be bold in our vision for the future and consider new ideas around giving value and potentially even rights to our natural resources, pursuing creative options for collective land ownership to increase accessibility, particularly for disproportionately excluded demographics, including BIPOC communities, and truly relocalize our economies and incentivize local purchasing to keep our dollars in Vermont and invest in our agricultural backbone. And I'm actually going to finish today by sharing a few words by Maria Schumann, who is a farmer with Kate Hill Orchard, a diversified operation in Greensboro. And Maria spoke on behalf of Rural Vermont a few weeks ago at the May Day car rally in Burlington, which celebrated essential workers on International Workers' Day. And I think her words speak very powerfully and very well to the topics that we're discussing today. So these are Maria's words. And she says, farmers have always been essential, but you wouldn't know it if you looked at the low wages and dangerous working conditions of migrant farm workers all across this country. And you wouldn't know it if you looked at the suicide rates of US farmers, 5 times higher than any other occupation. You wouldn't know it if you talked to Vermont's dairy farmers hanging in there by a thread. You wouldn't know it if you talked to almost any farm facing each day with crushing debt. The wealthy and the powerful are trying to use this moment to grab more wealth, but they can't eat money. They need us. Our secret weapon is solidarity, to work together to understand we're all in it together. And now is the time to demand an end to an exploitive, extractive, unjust agricultural system based on exploiting people, animals, and the world. It's time to build and grow and nourish a regenerative, just, restorative agriculture economy that treats workers with dignity and honors this beautiful earth. And that's an excerpt from a slightly longer speech that Maria gave at the May Day rally, and you can find the whole thing on Rural Vermont's website, which Lisa has and will include in the notes for this webinar. And I just want to thank everyone for being here and all the speakers for being part of this. It's a very valuable experience, and I appreciate everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Molly. Yes, I will share the information, and wow, that was powerful. And, you know, thank you for everything that you're doing. We have, oh, I see people are putting various resources and links into the chat, and I'll make sure we capture those and send them out in the notes. And we have one more speaker lined up today, and that is Grace from NOFA Vermont. Hi, Grace.
Hello. Just getting unmuted.
Hi.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for gathering us all together. Should I go ahead?
It's all yours, yes.
Okay, well, are we going to leave, would you like to leave a few minutes for questions at the end? I can just keep this pretty short.
Yeah, I think I need a couple minutes just for wrap up at the end. And, you know, we'll see where we are. If we don't have time for questions, that's okay. We can, you know, type into the chat and kind of address it that way.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, first, I want to start with just a lot of gratitude for you bringing this conversation together and for everyone taking time out of your day to be here. The existence of this conversation gives me a lot of hope, and all that I've heard from the other speakers give me a lot of hope and sense that we're really all working on the same team in service to these goals, and that feels really good. One of the metaphors that I've been sitting with in this time period is that we're all sort of mycelial. We're like mushroom connected underground, and we sort of can pop up in different places and do work in different types of spaces depending on which organization we work for, or if we're a farmer, or if we're a parent of a small child, whatever our role is right now, where we have some, where we can bring this work, we can pop up and represent these shared core values of equity and of justice, and the sense that we're currently in the process of helping birth or midwife to the birth a new system of economy, which is really about valuing land, valuing people, and doing so in a way that is truly just and accessible. So NOFA Vermont has been around for the last 50 years. Next year, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. And in the last year, right before I came on board, when the previous executive director, Enid Wanacott of blessed memory, was in the role, she and the team affirmed that they wish to add social justice to the mission statement of NOFA. So our mission is that we're helping to build a food system that centers economic viability for farmers, ecologically sound practices for the land, and social justice for all. So our work over this past year has been really centering the intersection of those three criteria. How can we do work together that is environmentally and socially just, and that places agriculture at the center of our economy, has been our question. And this pandemic period has, in many ways, as so many of the former speakers have said, really catalyzed a lot of the conversations that have been needing to be had already. None of this is new. It's just more intense and amplified right now. This class stratification, racial barriers to access for so many things, and privileging certain types of work over others, that's been happening for the entire project of this nation. What we have the chance to do now is see it together and then figure out how we can build systems going forward that work to undo and build a new way. So I don't want to take a ton of time, because so much of what has been said is just what NOFA would want to say. And one of the good things about this time is we've learned to be in coalition. We've learned there are some things that we can lead on, and there's other things that we really just need to center other people's work and echo it. So, I want to shout out to migrant justice here in Vermont. We're very lucky to have migrant justice, which is a national leader around worker-led organizing, and we can just center the policy goals that they are willing to share and be sure that we're advocating for them together. And we can do that with a number of organizations and with a number of just groups of folks, so that we can be sure that a shared message is getting heard. So that's one of the ways that NOFA is trying to do this work ourselves, is to figure out when we can be helpful and when we can take a leadership position and when we don't need to, and we can really support our allies and take a step back. There are some sort of specific programs that we have been able to lead on, and Kate mentioned our farm share program, which is a really great example of sort of building economic viability, supporting the land base, and also supporting food access and equity. And what we've also been able to do is, by applying this sort of Venn diagram of care onto all of our work, it helps us sharpen our message. So an example that I was thinking would be maybe helpful to share was when all of this debate about the farmers markets was going on, about whether farmers markets should open. And if so, how would they reopen? And we as NOFA, we're very invested in farmers markets as a direct market. We believe that more local access points are important during this crisis, not fewer. We need local control of our food, not less. However, we're concerned about, keeping everyone safe and the risks inherent. And we were working extensively with the Agency of Commerce, the Agency of Ag, the Governor's Office. And originally, they had said, okay, we're going to put out some guidance that basically allows for the governor wanted, touchless, everything to be ordered in advance. And what we were able to do is apply our lens. Is this just? Is it ecological, and is it economically viable for farmers? So what we found was, like, it doesn't meet all those criteria in our view if folks using EBT funds can't access this space, because EBT transactions must be done in person unless you have a state waiver, which we tried to get and we couldn't. So what we were able to do is really stay focused on this point that these markets have to be a space for all. We need more EBT funds coming into markets, and we need to ensure that people can do an EBT transaction. And if we can't ensure that, then we are not claiming this as a win until all can have access. And so we just stuck with that because we're centered in our mission, which is where, having some frameworks really do help to give clarity to your work. And ultimately that is what came through. So that felt like a really great example of a time when being insistent on access can have can materialize. We also, I wanted folks to be aware on this call that we have made our Farmer Emergency Fund, which is a fund that helps farmers in emergency, available to cover sick pay for any farmer or farm worker who gets sick during COVID. So we are aware that some people are excluded from CARES Act support based on their legal status or business model or whatever it is. We will just cover the time if a farmer or farm owner or farm worker needs to be out, we will pay the relief pay to sort of help establish that everyone deserves sick pay and that this is a necessary step in preventing the spread of COVID, and it's a human right, and help make it available to many farmers who may just not have the economic resources. And if the government isn't going to support in this way, we can step in. So that's something that we are trying to get the word out about and get people to begin to use the program. So please do spread that word. And finally, we're working a lot at the policy level to just send this broad message that what feels like a very, very challenging time, and is for many, many people, could be a portal into a new way of doing things. And if we come together and we have vision about where we're going, we could build an economy that centers justice, centers our land, and that centers our farmers. And we have the opportunity right now to make strategic investments in new models and new ways of doing things. And a lot of that is on the strength of this relationship, the network that we have going here in Vermont. It looks like pop-up calls like this one. It looks like emergent planning sessions and new collaborative relationships, and centering each other's work in our policy asks, and giving money away between to groups who have been excluded from stimulus. It looks like us all showing up for each other, and as we practice this together, we will develop our skill and muscle getting comfortable doing this, and it will feel easier and easier and easier. So I think we are together going to ensure that we arrive to a better outcome than we had going into this. That is my hope.
Thank you very much, Grace, and thanks to all of you, those who were able to share your experiences, but also everyone who took an hour out of your busy days and is tired of Zoom and tired of screen time. We appreciate you being here with us. I'm going to close with one last question for all of you, which is just to get a sense of how long you want to continue these. So you should see a poll on your computer that says, how do you want to get information about farming markets and distributing Vermont food in the time of COVID-19? We started this online conversation series in early April and thought, we'll do it for a few weeks, we'll see what happens. And, here we are in the middle of May and we're still going. And the reason why we're still going is because important topics keep coming up and because all of you keep showing up. But still, we feel like it's important to check in and, take the pulse periodically. So I'm going to end the polling and share the results so you can see that about 83% said online conversations like today, even though it's the growing season and even though it's getting nice outside. We've got 21% interested in podcasts, 28% in Facebook, 90% like email, 52% like website, less on the phone conversation, 7%, 14% on printed materials, and not so much for other, but we appreciate hearing about other ideas if folks have them. Again, we've been keeping an eye on the chat, and what I want to do in closing here, we're just about out of time, but I'm just going to show one final screen, which shows what we've got coming up. So next week, we've got only one more of these planned, but that's what I said last week. And then this new topic, which isn't new, which has been happening, but we felt like we needed to add it here for a conversation. It's on virtual farm and food events. And Tara, do you want to take a moment to share with us what you're planning for next week?
Yeah. Hi. I had myself on video. Yeah. Thanks all. Yes. So clearly in-person events has kind of dropped over the last few months, and we've noticed definitely a recent uptick in virtual events and online ways of communicating and showing, and farms showing what they do, and virtual tastings and ways to engage the community and consumers and customers with what farms are doing, what food producers are doing. And we're just going to talk a little bit about structure of them and give some examples and some tips and recommendations. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and like the one last week, where we had some videos of what people are actually doing on their farm stands. We're working on that. So it will be, you'll be getting to hear about how different tastings and classes that are done virtually are happening, but we'll also do a little show and tell as well.
Definitely show.
There'll be more. I know. I was just, we hadn't planned this, and I haven't mentioned this to Tara, but boy, a live tasting could be fun. So anyway,
Wednesday lunch.
Right, and it is lunchtime, so still working on the details, but we'll keep you posted, and more information will be available at that gouvm.edu/CelVT food website, or feel free to contact me at any time. And once again, thank you all for being here and for the amazing work that you're doing, and stay healthy and stay safe, and keep farming if you're a farmer, and keep supporting local farms for all of us here who are doing the CSA and farm share and reaching out to farms any way we can. So thank you all.